Coming up this spring election, we're going to have the No Taxation Without Representation and Equality Amendment. Dan Lennington is standing by from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty to talk about these things. Dan, it's good to have you on the program. Would you like to share any kind of just general feelings about the decision by the Wisconsin Supreme Court to take up the ballot drop box case?
Well, we're party of that case, so I don't want to say anything negative about the justices, but I don't think there's really an example in Wisconsin Supreme Court history, maybe even U.S. Supreme Court history of a court reconsidering its own interpretation of a statute just a couple years later, and perhaps reversing its own interpretation of a statute. I think it's probably safe to say that would be unprecedented. And so, the Tigan case is really about ballot harvesting. It is obviously about drop boxes, but it's about who can deliver a absentee ballot to a post box or to a clerk. And if you say that anybody can deliver a ballot, an absentee ballot to a clerk or a post office box, it opens up the door-to-door ballot harvesting, which is prevalent in a lot of major blue, liberal, Democrat cities.
Sure, that's what they want, though.
That's
what they want.
Yeah, so when it's not, well, I just want to stress to people, this is not just about voting in the park and just a box with a county clerk or city clerk sitting next to it. It is about door-to-door, nursing home, apartment complex, you name it. Handing people ballots, collecting ballots from them, and then those people, whoever they are, delivering them somehow to be counted at some date. So that's what is the big concern. That's why our statutes are written the way they are.
And because we have other court cases in Dane County saying, oh, you don't need a complete address. You're not going to need to show ID because we have indefinite confinement, which allows you to submit an absentee ballot without voter ID. What could possibly go wrong in the ballot harvesting operations? What could possibly go wrong? With an unclean voter roll, could possibly go wrong. This is about Joe Biden is going to have a tough time in Wisconsin in this upcoming election. And so they're pulling out all stops. There's a story. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. $800,000 in an election grant from a dark money nonprofit is going straight into the city of Milwaukee to target urban voters. So now that the potential ballot harvesting, ballot drop boxes are going to be back in play, so is the dark money that is going to influence the process of elections. It's bad. It's just bad. And we want everybody to vote. We want legal votes counted. We want votes. There are requirements for ballots that are cast absentee to make sure that the person who casts the ballot, that their vote is counted. We want all legal votes counted. We want people's votes counted. But if we're going to play fast and loose with the rules, it gets really, really wonky real quick, and it's no good for anybody, either side. Tell me, and we'll talk about this as it goes forward. But tell me about there's two amendments to consider that are about, I guess, reestablishing what should have been obvious under the rule of law, and at least in a common sense understanding, people think that this makes sense, right? So we need to redeclare that we are for equality in Wisconsin, and we need to redeclare that a governor should not be allowed to fake veto a budget and give us a 400-year tax increase. These are two separate questions, but they both kind of get to the same, no kidding. Why should we have to do this? Well, because we do.
Yes, so these were passed by both houses of the legislature just last week, passed in the Senate, earlier this week passed in the Senate. So they have to be also passed again next January. And so that's how we amend our Constitution, is that two successive legislatures pass the same resolution. It doesn't have to be signed by the governor, and then it would go on the ballot. So let's say the Assembly and the Senate passed again next January. It would be on the April 2025 ballot, which, by the way, would be the same time as the Supreme Court election with Ann Walsh Bradley versus Judge Brad Schimmel. And so these amendments would change the Constitution. One would enshrine into law that all of us need to be treated equally by the government, and this is to expressly get rid of DEI and affirmative action and things that are wreaking havoc in our educational institutions and our state government. And the other one is to prevent the struggle we've had for years over the line item veto in Wisconsin that allows the governor to do these Vanna White vetoes and these Frankenstein vetoes. And so this is a no taxation without representation amendment that would prohibit the governor from creating or authorizing increase of any tax or fee. And so what he did is he created this $5 billion expenditure by doing a creative veto that allows the school districts to raise their revenue limits every year for the next 400 years. And so we've been, we gave the governor this power, and we amended it in 1990 and 2008, and we got to fix it again to get rid of this new scheme that Governor Evers has come up with.
Yeah, and maybe getting rid of the immense power that the veto pen in Wisconsin has over this budget is something to consider for the future. But that you have to have a constitutional amendment to ban racism. I never thought I'd see the day. I mean, I think the one on the 400-year tax increase, that's a layup. I can't imagine that would be difficult to get another successive legislative session to pass. But it doesn't. I'm absolutely gobsmacked that we actually have to have a constitutional amendment that says you can't be racist. You can't be racist in the name of anti-racism, which is basically what this amendment says. You can't treat people differently, better or worse, based on the color of their skin. Now, for some reason, I think this might be hard to pass through another legislative session, but that's because some people don't like the sticky culture war questions. But if we don't do this, Dan, then, we're going to look like California pretty soon, I think, given the way the left has an enthusiasm for insinuating even things that are against the U.S. Constitution, quietly through administrative actions.
Well, the good news is that a couple weeks ago, Marquette released a poll that said that 75% of Americans support ending race-based DEI and race-based affirmative action. That includes 53% of African Americans, 77% of Hispanics, 73% of independents, and 58% of Democrats all support ending affirmative action.
That's amazing, because affirmative action is a general category. It can be a lot more benign looking than what some of the stuff we've been talking about lately suggests.
Yeah, so this is widely supported, and I think it's important to make express in our Constitution what we already know, that everybody should be created and treated equally. And the reason is because we do all sorts of things that nobody pays attention to in the state government. For example, they have this diversity supplier program, which the state, Tony Evers, his agency, spend $200 million a year on suppliers to the state government based on race. These are called the Diverse Supplier Program. They put out a report. You can read about it. $200 million. Some agencies, like DWD, they spend 58% of their entire contracting budget on, quote, diverse suppliers. A lot of agencies spend over a quarter of their budget or a third of their budget on, quote, diverse suppliers. So
all that means is discrimination. They spend their money on actively seeking out ways to discriminate.
Yeah, so if you're a small business out there and you provide IT services, or you provide, paper products, or you provide custodial services, or you provide, part-time security guards, all you people who want to provide services to the state to get another purchase order, you're going to be looked at through the lens of equity. And you're going to be viewed, and the color of your skin is going to be a factor in whether or not you get that contract. And, we spend a lot. We spend $3 billion on contractors every year. And to say that $200 million of it is going to be set aside for people based on race is illegal. It's unconstitutional. And we need to make explicit in our Constitution what we already know.
We should, while we've got an opportunity here, also mention that, and my apologies, I think I said this April. That's for next April, hopefully, if it passes. I think certainly the taxation without representation one will. I hope the Equality Amendment does as well. But on this ballot, we have got some election questions, Dan, and it's worth pointing out that if you think you have nothing to vote for, you do. So please recognize that you have an amendment that would ban the use of private funds that would be used to execute elections. And the other one regards who is by law permitted to perform the tasks of conducting elections, primaries, referenda, et cetera.
Yeah, this really gets at the Zuckerbucks issue.
All of it does, yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg gave all that money, and especially we're learning all sorts of things about what happened in Green Bay and all the access that was given to special groups about who voted and when they voted, and sort of real-time access so that people could be specifically targeted to get their ballots. And so this, in combination with the ballot harvesting, if we're allowed to have these billionaires from out of state come in and use all this information and get special access to information, plus the use of ballot harvesting, would be an amazing advantage to one party over the other. And we should have fair elections so that both parties have equal shot at winning.
Yeah, and I wanted just to mention this because we'll talk more about the spring election coming up. That's April 2nd. But a lot of people are like, well, Trump's got it locked up or Biden's got it locked up or whatever. And not a lot of people turn out unless there's a hot school board race. And typically, as we always say in spring elections, you tend to have special interests turn out. So you do have a reason to go to the polls because there are two questions. Together they ban Zuckerbucks. Now, I don't know what we can do about the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That may require another constitutional amendment in the future. But together, these two amendments effectively ban what happened in Wisconsin and, political operatives being used to essentially execute the elections themselves at the expense of election officials. So that's what happened in Green Bay. So people, please remember that April 2nd, circle that on your calendar. And then, as far as the Equality Amendment is concerned, I just really, really hope that we can keep some enthusiasm behind this one. And we can get that so that when Brad Schimmel runs for the Wisconsin Supreme Court in 2025, he's got a little bit of wind to his back.
Yeah, and it would be good to know whether his opponent supports that amendment either. So we'll know real quick once that election starts heating up.
Indeed.
But yeah, that'll be a very important election, 2025
Huge.
April.
It'll be huge, because it always is. Thank you so much, Dan, for jumping on the show today.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the program, and we will take a break. Thanks very much.